I mean, I really didn't prepare anything because this was a session by Lindsay that I mean, I wish she was here. She's very smart and help us a lot. Um, just few points regarding the presentations yesterday, how we have progressed so much from where we were before, 2 years ago, a year ago. Our main concern was the endpoint, what we were going to measure on the disease. We were saturated with the thought that we couldn't even measure seizures on Syngap, and we were not going to find endpoints. And if we didn't find endpoints, we cannot go to move to have any drug development or at least go to trials. We moved from being focused on seizures. Now we have find EEG endpoints that are not seizures. That's a gigantic move, and it looks very promising. That's amazing work. It was done on CHOP, but it seems to be that it's coming together very well. That's an amazing thing in the clinical staff. We also move to the point that the FDA now wants the family participation to be a center part of every study. Then they focus on what is important for families. And they focus that the researchers to be approved for the FDA, they have to bring the families together and say, behavior is important for us. Measure our behavior. Sleep is important for us. Then that's why all those other measurements are becoming important. And they are in Syngap, they make more sense because that's what we see every day. That's something that we can report well. That's something that parents can report. Then parents report outcomes now at the center of every research. Then that for me was super important. That has been a move that it will help us a lot, that we really have something to measure in the disease. Then we can see if we take a medication, we can see from point A to point B and get approved. And the other thing was very important this year was that we proved that not just the neurons on the brain are dysfunctional on Syngap, that the second most important system that has neurons actually is the GI system, the enteric system. Then we know why our kids have constipation. We know a lot of things now that make sense. The cilia is very important to us. And I think we are going to find much more. Then we know why some of our poor kids have feeding tubes and they cannot. We know also much more about maybe why the lungs are having issues. Some kids report to have infections more frequently. Then I think it's becoming together more and more the fact what is Syngap about, that it's not just brain, it's a disease that affects a lot of systems. Another thing that has been very nice to see is that we may have a more personalized medicine in Syngap. I think you guys, when you compare one kid, like, my kid, the medication was very good on my kids, the medication doesn't work on my kid, and you are like, but they have Syngap. We see that it's maybe 3 groups of Syngap, maybe, that they behave a little bit different. Oh, I'm sorry. And it's coming to the point of more personalized medicine. For example, the kids that do well with valproic, the kids that don't do well with valproic, the kids that do well with stimulants, the kids that go bonkers when they get a stimulant. Then I think we are going to have a point of personalized medicine. That was very nice to see that we are starting to see that. And I am expecting a lot of progress because that we depend a lot of AI for that. It's all made mostly by AI. Then I think that's going to progress very fast for next year. Then we may have already very determined groups next year. That's what we are hoping for. That's kind of my points in the clinical stuff that I have for you guys that I thought it was very important. Mike, anything? Mike, was there? Okay, then I just want to do a brief overview of what is a retrospective and prospective studies and how you merge them together, because basically that's what we are doing right now in SRF and has worked very well for us. Most of the information of clinical studies has come together because that. Then Briefly, retrospective studies, they are the ones that focus on the historical data, basically the charts that your clinicians download and the citizen data. And with that, you can get very cost-effective and easy, in quotes, way to analyze data. Now, with all the help of AI, you can analyze it very fast. But it has the challenge that the data can be biased. And for example, as a clinician forgot to put a medication or a symptom or describe the symptom wrong. Or the most common data bias that we have in medicine is omission. Then that's one thing. Then the way to fill up those empty boxes is to do a prospective study. That is what we are doing at CHOP, at Colorado, and at Stanford. That is going to be on our next site. And that observed the participant from the moment the participant goes to the clinic to several years. And the most common natural history studies can take 20 years. But the way that we are doing it, you can accelerate it in 2-3 years. That's the point of doing all this mixing up. Then that collects the events and is very clear and is very pointed, and the information is very clean. Then that's the value of that, but of course take a lot of resources. Then the pros of combining this data is that you actually, when you aggregate data in prospective and retrospective studies, you can make something very much more clear, and you don't have to have a patient participating for more than 20 years in a prospective study. That was the classic description of a disease. That was what normally was done in medicine until probably 5 years ago. And the cons about that is that you have a risk that you have to clean up the data a lot, because if not, you can have inconsistencies. But with the help that we have now, we have been able to do that. Lastly, is just to remind you one thing that we have said again and again: please participate, because this data is used by your treating clinicians too. This data is used by industry. It's going to be used by you as a family. It's going to be used by everybody that's involved in the care of your kid, and the FDA. That is basically what we are trying to get through to get to studies.